am a caregiver, and it is not something that I wanted to be. At 18 years old, I left my parents' home in rural Mississippi and moved to Nashville, Tennessee to pursue my dream of a music career. After moving to Nashville, I landed not one, but two independent record deals, sang at various music studios, and even did some background vocals for some pretty amazing celebrities at the time. I was living a life most people my age could only dream of. I finished my bachelor's degree at Middle Tennessee State University with a degree in recording industry business management. But my career took a different turn. You see, I took a job in banking. And at 26 years old, I became a vice president, and I was in charge of retail banking and investment banking. I made really good money for a 26-year-old. I had what I thought everything I wanted. A dream car, awesome apartment, parties, friends, killer suits and heels. Y'all, my shoes were off the chain. But I also met the love of my life at that time. And we talked about getting married and having children. And like most Southern girls, because I'm from Georgia, I created the scrapbook life. So I scrapbooked out what our wedding was going to look like, how many kids we were going to have, what our kids were going to look like, hell, even what our kids were going to be when they got older. And honestly, if you look back at it now, it's probably really creepy. But here we are, so that's okay. The guy I fell in love with happened to be a little bit older than me by about 12 years, and he was a soldier in the U.S. Army. I mean, who can pass up a good-looking soldier in uniform? Right? So obviously, we got married, and we had our first son. My life was everything I dreamed of, and so much more. That's when it changed. On March 15th, 2005, my husband, Hamilton Kinard, who is with us today in the audience, was hit by a roadside bomb while serving in Iraq, leaving him in a coma for 3 days, and ultimately leaving him diagnosed with a severe traumatic brain injury. At 29 years old, I had to give up my job to care for him. There went the money, the parties, the friends, family. It was all gone in the blink of an eye, just poof, there it goes. My days went from wearing high-end business suits to sporting yoga pants and a t-shirt. I went from having business meetings with like-minded individuals to sitting alone in a hospital for 3 to 5 hours at a time with my husband and my son. I went from having a 401k and a savings account and a retirement plan to living off of merely $800 a month from Social Security disability, because that's all my husband was getting at the time. And might I remind you, we did all of that with a newborn. My name is Britnee Kinard, and I am a military caregiver. I am a caregiver. Never a statement I thought I would ever say so early in life, but here we are. You see, I was put into a rare box, not just a rare box because I'm a caregiver, but because I'm a caregiver between the ages of 18 and 49 years old. According to caregiver.org, there are 43.5 million unpaid caregivers in the U.S. today, just like me. Half of those caregivers are between the ages of 18 and 49 years old. People just like me. People who woke up one morning without any warning and suddenly found themselves under a new title. In my case, it was a husband that was hit by a roadside bomb while serving in Iraq. But it could be a family member who has fallen ill or someone who has recently been in a car accident. Being a caregiver is never something, it actually never crossed my mind, much less not having the resources to be a caregiver. You see, I thought there were tons of resources, support programs, respite for individuals that found themselves in situations such as these. I mean, we all see the TV commercials, right? They're everywhere. Only to find out that majority of the services are not available to caregivers between the ages of 18 and 49 years old. My husband, Hamilton Kinard, has over 56 injuries, including a severe traumatic brain injury and his most current diagnosis of cortical blindness. That explosion I mentioned left him in a coma for 3 days at Camp Victory. Now, when he returned home, it took him 6 years to receive his first disability rating from the Department of Veterans Affairs. And in February 2010, my husband received his Social Security disability rating, which, like I said earlier, yielded him about $800 a month, which is what our family lived off of at the time, because that's all we had due to me having to quit my job. And obviously, we blew through our 401k and our savings accounts and anything we had in the bank to stay afloat. Now, when he got his decision from the Department of Veterans Affairs, his first disability rating, it was a whopping 30%. Now, I hope most of you don't have to deal with the VA or the VA rating system, but to give you a little bit of an idea, 30% yields you somewhere around $550 a month, plus or minus, depending upon if you have children or if you're married. So, like I previously said, we blew through all of our 401k and our savings. It's all we had to make ends meet. Now, Hamilton eventually did get his permanent and total disability rating of 100% from the Department of Veterans Affairs, just 10 years later, in February of 2021. That's right, y'all, 16 years. That is 16 years of unnecessary suffering, financial strain, and mental breakdowns for my family. You see, caregivers like me do not always have access to certain programs or are not eligible to programs like the Department of Aging, Department of Veterans Affairs Caregiver Program, Social Security Disability under certain circumstances, and other state-funded programs that are oftentimes available to the elderly and Alzheimer's and dementia patients. For example, there's currently a program in Georgia right now where you can pay a family member to be your caregiver. Y'all, I cannot tell you how excited I was when I found out about this program. I went home, gathered up all my information, got all my documents, picked up the phone, and called, only to be told that we were not eligible because we were not over the age of 65. Talk about a kick in the gut, man. Another door slammed in our face. There are currently 1.1 million military caregivers, just like me, in the United States today. 33% of those caregivers are also spouses who raise young children, just like me. Did you know that 1/3 of those marriages will fail due to the burdens of caregiving? I don't want to be that 1/3. In fact, I'm not going to be that 1/3. There are currently 56.4 million paid and unpaid caregivers in the U.S. today. And did you know that 62% of those caregivers have reported severe financial strain? So sadly, this is far from just being my story. Unfortunately, it's also far from being an American problem. According to the International Alliance of Care organization, which is made up of 18 countries, there are 260 million caregivers across the globe. Many of them, just like me, caregivers who suddenly found themselves in these positions. So this is very much a global issue. If 62% of caregivers in the United States are reporting financial distress, how do you think the other countries are faring? For example, in Canada, 96% of people who receive home aid care have an unpaid caregiver. And 1 out of every 3 of those caregivers have also expressed financial strain. We can do better. Now, there are many ways to help the caregiving community. Some of those ways are more obvious, like contacting your senators, your congressmen, your politicians, your local mayors in your town. And although you very much should do so, that isn't going to spark immediate change. It isn't going to get the ball rolling overnight. That's more of a long-term game. So what else can we do? Well, for starters, we can hook up with local nonprofits that provide actual respite care and actual financial support for caregivers in need. I know for my family, we wouldn't be where we are today without the help of several nonprofits, but more specifically, Wounded Warrior Project Independent Living Program. That program provides me with an aide that comes to my house twice a week to help me with my husband and his injuries. Now, it not only provides me a little bit of sanity, but it also provides me with a relief of a burden, because I know that she's going to care for him and she's going to treat him the same manner in which I would. Another example would be to partner with a caregiver in your local community and give them the education and the resources they need to start their own program to help others in the community. Because after all, who knows caregivers better than caregivers themselves, right? I was fortunate enough to start a nonprofit called the SD Gunner Fund. We train service animals for veterans, first responders, and special needs children. And those service animals relieve certain burdens for the caregivers, but they also provide a sense of independence and confidence to the recipients moving forward. So today, I boldly invite you to go out into your community and help a caregiver, because we can do better and we should do better. Thank you.